understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
This is my third audio blog, and because of time constraints, I'm doing it as I drive into the radio studio on Monday morning, 24 hours out from the puppet Barack Hussein Obama being sworn in as the 44th president. I'm going to endeavor doing these audio blogs to not do it in the car, so sorry about the background noise, but got to multitask here with the time we've got. It's very simple. We are a conquered nation. We have been under 10 FEMA regions since 1979. People said, well, those are just emergency regions, which was true. They were tied into the National Security Act of 47. They were tied into continuity of government legislation and executive orders. But we're operating under a continued national emergency, and now it's all publicly admitted. NORTHCOM out of Colorado Springs is the true capital. The federal Congress, House and Senate, state legislatures are ceremonial. This is all stated publicly. They serve at the pleasure of the National Security Council, the president, which themselves are controlled by these corporate governing councils, like the Intercouncil or the Council on Foreign Relations. And so we are a completely conquered nation. And now the last little vestiges, the last little shreds of states' rights are being removed as the federal government comes in and announces all your cows and sheep and pigs have to have these RFID tags in them. Then it turns out that there was no law passed, so they just say, okay, it's voluntary. But then at the state level, everywhere, the different government bureaucrats at the state and federal level tell you it is the law and intimidate people and buffalo many into believing it's the law. Now they're entering into the Federal Register a new regulation saying that it is mandatory and that all state laws to the contrary are preempted, because a lot of states like Missouri and others have passed laws saying, look, you don't have to register your premises, register all your animals, and keep them in a government database. And with that comes the taxation and regulation and control. And years ago we told people, we said they want to federally track with RFID trackers all of your livestock because they want to start a carbon tax, which is a small part of the overall program taxing the entire carbon cycle of the planet Earth. The methane, the carbon dioxide they exhale, all of it. And so that's now happening. But it's not just about this costly regulatory system. It's about the bureaucrats and the enforcers and $1,000 a day fines if an RFID tag falls out of your cow's ear, which routinely happens with all the other tags. Then you're fined $1,000 a day if you don't immediately report it and immediately pay for another tag to be sent. And they're going to be on your property, these federal bureaucrats. And then the premises ID, you basically waive your property rights, and you can go read all the documents. We posted them up at INFOWARS.com and PrisonPlanet.com. You basically waive your property rights and agree through contract to go under federal and international control and all these foreign treaties. Now remember, the Mexican beef, the Venezuelan beef, the Chilean beef, the Brazilian beef, they don't have to go through all this. They don't have to do this. All these globalist regulations are only on the few Western nations in Western and Northern Europe and the United States, because these are the only industrial nations that still have a middle class. It's publicly, it's admitted by the Club of Rome, the CFR, and others that this is about deindustrializing the United States and fully institutionalizing the people. And that brings me on to another subject. I don't want to be an institutionalized person. People think of institutionalized as being in a mental institution or being in prison or being on probation or being on welfare. But if you look at the public schools, which going back 100 years ago, John Dewey and others on record, we've done countless shows, written countless articles on this subject, said the family's a disease that has to be eradicated for the collectivist eugenicist plan, on and on and on. And this program hit its heyday in the 1930s, that Hitler embarrassed the eugenicists where, they had their own public schooling and their own killing of the old and the infirm and the mentally handicapped, physically handicapped. 35 states in the U.S. were killing deformed babies, were engaging in forced abortions. Oh, you thought abortion became legal with the Roe v. Wade in '74. Just go look it up, folks. It didn't. Under the health department of the states, chartered under federal guidelines and funding under the Cold Springs Harbor Eugenics Office, abortions were conducted. Hundreds of thousands. Well, they admit to 457,000 forced sterilizations under federal funds, not counting state or corporate matching funds. A lot of corporations pay for it, but the Colgate Foundation and others. They would go in and forcibly sterilize the women, but they admit to close to 500,000 of those, and that's just what we know of, and that went on until 1987. And then they quietly changed the name of the programs, and we do know of some sterilizations that are still going on, but it's not at the level it was, thank God. But I digress. The point is, we're institutionalized. We're an institutionalized society. To my horror, I just learned from my wife that we had a repair person in the house last week. And to my dread, I have to focus on the office and INFOWARS.com, PrisonPlanet.com, the PrisonPlanet.tv site, the films we're making, the 4-hour radio show, the weekend show. And so I wish I could be there fixing, broken garbage disposals and things. But quite frankly, I'm not good at it anyways. But you've got to have workmen in your house. Carpet cleaners, plumbers, air conditioner repair people. And there were a couple of these repair people in the house, and they said in front of my wife and in front of a cleaning lady that comes twice a week, well, these children here, well, started speaking to the children. Gotta love how these little establishment bootlickers, always do that, just bypass the parents entirely. Aren't you kids supposed to be in school? Why aren't you kids in school? I mean, the arrogance of right there in your own house, in front of you, talking to the children like that. And then my wife said, well, we've had them, we've tried some private schools. They're both little. One of them's 4, one of them's 6. And, of course, the baby's too young to be in anything. But we're trying homeschooling out right now. By the way, my children, since they've been doing it for a month and a half, are 100% happier. They were happy before, but they're just so much happier, so much more excited, and learning so much more. But anyway, side issue. I discovered days after, to my horror, that the people in our house, well, one of the two guys says, aren't you kids supposed to be in school? Why aren't you in school? And my wife says, oh, they're homeschooled. And the guy says, well, that's illegal. That's illegal. Now, for 2 years, they've been telling everybody that the National Animal ID and the Premises ID is not the law, that it's voluntary, because it is. But all over the country, you can Google it, from Kansas to Texas. There's cases in every major state, a bunch in Missouri. They have police come in and put people in handcuffs who are at the 4-H club or the county fair saying, well, it's illegal for you to be here showing an animal that isn't federally registered and under this federal system. But there is no law. But they still carry out the ritual of putting them in handcuffs and throwing them out to create the illusion that it's illegal. And my father and uncle own a family farm and ranch. It's been in our family since 1829 out in East Texas. Well, actually a small piece of an original huge piece that was originally in our family. We only have a small part of what was the tens of thousands of acres they got under a Mexican land grant. We always say Spanish, really Mexican land grant. But the old timers call them Spanish land grants. Because previous to that, there were Spanish grants to Spanish settlers. That's a side issue. I always babble and go down rabbit trails, and I'm about to get to the office. I'm going to have to cut this short. The point is that there is no law, but they just go out and operate as if it's a law and terrorize people. Just like there's no law you have to take vaccines.